If you took every single oil well on Earth and multiplied it by 300, you still would not have half the liquid gas floating on Titan right now. You open the raw data folder marked under file code NASA NRO 77 and look straight at the radio beam sent by the Cassini probe right before it was forced to crash into Saturn. The official news release given to TV stations said the sky of Titan was just a dead cloud of cold dust and frozen nitrogen gas. But when you look at the raw mass readings taken at the top of the atmosphere, something was building heavy molecular chains that cannot form unless something is alive. You zoom in on the chemical paper sheets pulled from the flyby pass 900 kilometers above the dark ground, where the meters picked up a massive drop in free hydrogen gas. The space agency told reporters that this missing gas was just blowing out into deep space or sinking into the cold dirt below. Yet the heat tools showed no solar winds strong enough to push that heavy gas out of the moon's gravity grip. Ask yourself why a dead ball of ice would swallow millions of tons of hydrogen gas every single second with perfect timing. The head engineer on duty wrote a short warning note in red ink on the side of the intake sheet, saying something in the sky was eating the gas blend. You check the security papers attached to the back of the file and see that 3 sensor workers were forced to sign secrecy contracts the very next morning. The leaders did not lock up those hard drives or clear the computer rooms to hide a simple math error made by a satellite antenna. They rushed to seal the files because those numbers proved an active biological engine was working at minus 180 degrees. Look at the cloud mapping charts signed under code JPL33 just minutes before the main radio feed was redirected to a private military server in Maryland. The remote sensors did not find simple black soot floating in the air. They found millions of tough, hollow round cell walls drifting through the methane rain. These tiny bags were built out of vinyl cyanide, a hard molecule that acts like living skin in places where water turns as hard as iron. While scientists spent billions looking for dry dead dust on Mars, a living sky was breathing right over our heads. When you flip to the floor weight charts pulled from the radar depth tools, the official story about a quiet, frozen moon falls apart right before your eyes. The dark lakes covering the north side of Titan do not sit still like simple pools of cold gas under the thick gray clouds. The deep radar scans show huge heavy masses moving against the water flow at a steady speed of 4 miles an hour. That heavy mass moving through the freezing liquid ocean weighs as much as a living city moving under the dark water. If you put on the headphones and listen to the raw radio tape from Cassini's last close pass, you hear the clicking sound of old magnetic tape turning on the floor reels. The worker on duty reads out a steady list of wave numbers while watching the cloud density meters linked to the big dish antenna outside. You hear the deep hum of the giant metal dishes turning in the dark desert night behind his flat voice. But at minute 12, the worker stops talking as the main line graph jumps violently to show long chains of complex carbon cells. That sudden jump on the paper chart forces you to stop the tape and pull up the technical notes locked inside the NRO 88 clearance folder behind the main desk. The organic chains floating through Titan's nitrogen air were not made by sunlight breaking apart simple gas over millions of years. They were built in tight, repeating patterns that need an internal heart to hold their shape together in the freezing dark. For 50 years, books told you that life needs liquid water to make a working cell, but these papers show a different biological system entirely. You start lining up the ground heat charts with the gas consumption numbers recorded by the small Huygens lander as it dropped through the sky. As the metal probe fell through the orange cloud layer, the amount of acetylene gas near the ground dropped straight down to zero. The engineers expected to find thick layers of frozen gas covering the ice rocks like heavy white snow across the dirt. Instead, the ground was swept clean, as if billions of microscopic mouths had eaten every single grain of fuel before it touched down. What happened next was taken out of public computer networks and hidden in a dark basement vault for more than 20 years. The lander's heat pins did not record a frozen dead rock. They logged hot spots rising straight out of the wet mud around the legs. The ground under the probe was making its own heat through a biological process that used zero oxygen and zero fresh water. On the audio line, you hear a lead scientist whisper a final phrase right before the wire went dead. The dirt is breathing. Then came a long silence that lasted 12 seconds while orbit radar logged a sudden change in the chemical makeup of the lake beaches below. The tracking systems on the main satellite picked up a huge rush of nitrogen gas bubbling out of the dark liquid bays all at once. It was as if the whole shoreline was reacting to the heat of the human probe sitting on the cold ground. When the signal from the lander died out 2 hours later, the main drives were wiped, the team was split up, and Titan was called a dead rock. Now look at what the private computer group found when they ran tests on the vinyl cyanide cells found floating in the upper sky. The test runs showed that these non-water cells, called azotosomes, are much tougher than any living cell wall found inside your own body right now. They do not freeze, they do not pop under heavy pressure, and they thrive in liquid fuel that would turn human blood into solid ice instantly. The flesh inside your arms needs heat and water to stay alive, but this cold life thrives in a world human hands cannot touch. Think about what those tough cell walls really mean as you go through the physical evidence tags attached to the raw light scan sheets. The creatures living in those dark fuel lakes do not need warm sunlight or fresh air to run their bodies through the day and night. They use liquid methane the same way your body uses water, pumping cold liquid through thin skin to move and think in the dark. It means life is not a lucky mistake that only happened in warm water on our rock. It happens on any world with liquid and carbon. This is where your stomach drops, because you realize the government did not hide the Titan papers to protect simple research money or win arguments with college teachers. They locked down the files because proving life exists without water means the universe is full of living systems that do not need Earth conditions to survive. If life can grow inside a dark lake of fuel at minus 180 degrees, then every cold moon and dark rock in space is alive. The science world stayed quiet because their entire way of looking for life was made useless in 10 seconds. Hit the subscribe button right now and leave a comment below if you want us to keep pulling raw file boxes and showing you what is hidden behind closed doors. Your support is the only thing that keeps this channel digging through forgotten papers, connecting hidden clues, and bringing you the truth every single week. Look at the big shift in military space spending and heavy rocket launches that took place quietly over the next 15 years after Cassini was destroyed. Private flight companies and defense labs started building special cold temperature probes and heavy ground drilling radar systems behind closed doors. The public was told these new rockets were built to check weather patterns and run cell phone signals over the ocean. Yet the building plans show heavy metal drills and freezing liquid loops built specifically to swim inside liquid fuel lakes. Why spend billions of dollars building specialized submarine tools to visit a dark moon 800 million miles away from home? Because controlling a world with a working non-water biosphere means holding a biological system that works under rules we are just starting to learn. If a defense team can harvest bugs that process fuel without heat, they can build materials that fix themselves and tools that work in deep space. The secret was kept to make sure no other nation landed a probe on those fuel shores first. Look at the radar photos taken of the Kraken Mare Lake 3 years after the main space mission was officially closed down and forgotten. A massive bright shape measuring 30 miles across appeared in the middle of the dark liquid, stayed still for 2 weeks, and then sank down into the deep water. When workers checked the radar echo against solid ice, the test came back negative because frozen fuel sinks straight to the bottom instantly. That 30-mile shape was not a block of ice. It was a massive living mass rising up to eat the air gas. Here is the most terrifying detail found inside inner planning sheets long after the Cassini team was sent home, and their gear was locked in storage boxes. In the summer of 2021, a leaked setup paper from the Dragonfly lander group showed the new flying probe was built with heavy defense gear and secret sampling tools. The public news page says the rotor probe is going to Titan to take photos of sandhills and test simple dirt chemistry. But the real equipment list shows thick biohazard boxes made to hold living cell cultures taken directly from the methane air. The real truth of what was found in those orange clouds hits you like a cold slap across the face late at night. When the probe dipped into the high sky of Titan, it did not find a quiet mix of dead dirt and cold rocks waiting for human books. It flew straight through the breath of a giant living system that covers the whole moon from the deep ground to the top clouds. The 12 workers who read those first raw sheets realized that human life is not the main rule for the universe, but just a rare warm exception. You close the thick cardboard folder and sit back in your chair as the quiet room settles around you in the dark. The space agency did not leave Titan because it was a boring frozen desert. They waited until they could build strong tools to go down and grab what is living there. They locked the raw light sheets in deep vaults, put out fake newspapers about dead dust, and waited for better rockets to be built. The orange moon spinning around Saturn is not a dead rock. It is an alien home waiting for us to come back. Now that you know what was really found inside those orange clouds, look up at the dark night sky with a completely different feeling tonight. We spend our lives thinking that life is weak, warm, and limited to fresh water and bright sun on our small home dirt. But the records from file NASA NRO 77 prove that nature builds living bodies in the coldest, most toxic holes in deep space. The sky above Saturn is breathing right now, and its cold cells do not care about our warm rules of life. The real question you need to ask yourself as you look out your window tonight is not when our rockets will land on those freezing fuel shores again. The real question is, if a whole living world can grow in a frozen sea of liquid gas without water, what kind of eyes are looking back at our sun from the dark rocks we still call dead? Think about that as you watch the dark sky tonight, because the line keeping our small world safe is much thinner than anyone ever told you.